Good morning, everyone. I am thrilled to see so many people in the chapel this morning. Welcome to Concord University, more specifically the Wilkes Family Chapel here in University Point. My name is Alicia Bessignier, and I'm the Vice President for Advancement here at Concord. It is an honor to be here today to remember and recognize the service and sacrifice of our nation's military. And because I was given this opportunity to stand before you this morning, I would personally like to take a moment to thank all of the men and women who were willing to give of themselves to defend me and my family and all of the liberties we enjoy today. It is a small fraction of our population that is charged with keeping us safe, and I will never be able to express my appreciation enough to you and all of your families. Soldiers are selfless people, and their bravery and loyalty are things we should all recognize year-round, not just on Veterans Day, but every day. So welcome to all of you, and more specifically, welcome to all of our veterans. Now, if you will please join me by standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and it will be followed by our national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you very much. Now, if you will please help me welcome Concord University President, Dr. Kendra Baugus.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, and thanks for that beautiful song. You all, the Concords did a wonderful job, as always. As we pause today to honor military veterans, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the members of our faculty, our staff, and student body who have also served our country. If you are one of those people, would you please stand so that we can recognize you? Thank you so much. Your service helped to shape the person you are, and because of that experience, you bring a richer understanding of this world to our campus. Thank you for being part of the Concord family. Veterans are an important thread in Concord's mission to serve. Our Office of Veteran Services is tailored specifically to the needs of our servicemen and women. Our Veterans Upward Bound program helps in the transition from military to student life by providing classes to prepare them for college, for technical or vocational school enrollment. We have staff on hand that helps our veterans and their families navigate the paperwork connected to college life, and there's a lot of it. And once veterans become students, we also offer them a lounge so they have a place to connect with other veterans and relax and have activities. There are two individuals here at Concord who devote their time to veteran support services and events like today, and I'd like to recognize them at this time. Dr. George Williams, our veteran advocate, over in the corner. And Robin Rutherford, our veteran certifying official. thank both of you for all that you do. Our guest speaker today understands firsthand the transition from military to student life. After completing her military service, Jessica Lynch pursued and completed a BA in elementary education and an MA in communication studies. But this West Virginia native's journey was far from typical, as many of us in today's audience know.
We are honored to have former United States Army Private First Class Jessica Lynch here today. Many of you will recall the news about Jessica back in 2003. She was injured and captured by Iraqi forces after her unit was ambushed in Iraq. Jessica's recovery by U.S. Special Operations Forces a week after her capture is recognized as the first successful rescue of an American prisoner of war since World War II and the first ever of an American female. Jessica is the recipient of the Bronze Star Medal, the Purple Heart, and the Prisoner of War Medal. Concord University feels so privileged to have Jessica Lynch with us on this Veterans Day to share her story of difficulties, determination, and accomplishment. Jessica.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I also just want to reiterate that Veterans Day is not necessarily about me standing up here telling my story. It's about those stories that are sadly not told enough. Yesterday I was speaking at a church in Ravenswood in Jackson County, and one of the Vietnam veterans got up and he just started sobbing and crying and just telling his story about how, they were spit upon and disrespected in such a manner. And for me to be able to stand here and just be able to bring light to all veterans, not just what happened to me and my comrades, but to all veterans, and to remember that we still have troops stationed throughout this world that are serving today. So thank you for having me here. So it was 2001, and I was getting ready to graduate from high school. And I thought I had my life figured out. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to become an elementary education teacher. I had all the paperwork and everything ready to go at Glenville State. And I just was one of those people that I knew what I wanted to do. That was until an Army recruiter kind of walked into our life, and he was there to speak to my brother, who is 1 year older than I am, and then I have a sister who is 1 year younger. So he was there to see my brother and kind of recruit him. My brother was at Montgomery, West Virginia Tech, in a engineering program. So he was all ready for college too. He knew what he wanted to do. But the more this recruiter was talking to us and just kind of explaining travel opportunities and free college, and my brother and I got to thinking, why not? Why not be able to serve our country? Why not be able to take that financial burden off of our parents by us enlisting into the military? So the next thing we knew, we were signing our name away and became Army recruits. My brother ended up leaving in August of 2001, and then I was on the delay entry program and was to leave in September. Of course, we all remember what happened September 11th, and then I found myself leaving 1 week later. I was scared to death because I wasn't for sure what was happening with the events of 9/11. I had never been on an airplane before, so this was my first time flying. So I go out on this little puddle jumper out of Beckley, and I was carrying a backpack on my back and walking out through there with the sergeant that was flying with me, and the strap on the backpack, it broke. It flipped me in the eye, and it knocked out my contacts. So there I was, at 18 years old. I was scared. I'd never flown, like I said, and now out of one eye I couldn't see. So the sergeant that was with me, he was like, oh, don't worry, that once you get to basic, we'll replace your eyewear. Being a naive 18-year-old, I'm thinking I'm getting a new pair of contacts, a pretty pair of glasses. No. If you know what I'm referring to, they hand me these big, I don't even know, big chocolate donuts that set on your face, and they're really heavy. And I look like one of those cartoon characters with big glasses on my face, and they say, "Private, welcome to BCGs." I don't know what BCGs are, but okay. And he was like, "They're birth control glasses. Welcome to basic training." So I finish out my time as a recruit, and I leave from Fort Jackson in South Carolina down to Fort Lee in Virginia. And there I'm a supply clerk. That was my job. So I learned the job skills that I need, and I go off to Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, Texas. So I get to El Paso, Texas, and this is February of 2002. Everything's going great, and I get to the spot where I'm finally ready to take over my the girl that was leaving out. And I'm like, well, what do I need to know? And she was like, toilet paper. Order toilet paper. That's your job. Don't mess that up. How do you mess up toilet paper? Apparently with 90 guys, you can mess up toilet paper. Don't let it be late. You have to order the right ply. I mean, these guys are very serious about their toilet paper. So I get there and I'm like, okay, I got this. So I start ordering the best that I can get, and everything's going great. And come about November of 2002, and they tell us you need to start preparing to go home to see your loved ones. They didn't say, why. It was just make sure that you see your families over the holidays, and that you give them, your love and your goodbyes. Okay, we can do that. Again, they don't tell us anything. So I go home for Christmas break. By the way, this is my daughter sitting up here and my mother. So I get there and I go home, and then we come back for after the holidays, and they start telling us we're going to be deployed to Southwest Asia. Okay, I don't know exactly what that means, but okay. So we ship off to Kuwait, and we are stationed there for approximately about a month. And then we get orders March 20th of 2003 that President Bush had officially declared war. And our job was just to pack up all of our belongings out of Kuwait, cross the border, and head north to Baghdad. Sounds simple enough. Our first day, we get in line with about, I'm going to say, 500 or so others. And again, our job was just to follow along. The second day, morning of March 21st, we noticed that we're starting to lag behind. Our vehicles are not able to keep up with the rest of them. So we slowly start lagging behind and get further behind. At this point, I am in a 5-ton vehicle with my supply sergeant, and my transfer case busted. So my vehicle becomes disabled. They ended up towing mine, so I jump in a Humvee with my best friend and the first sergeant. The morning of March 22nd, we became so distant from the rest of the convoy that we veer off track. We can no longer see them. Everything just becomes a cloud of dust because we are not following the correct path. and we just become literally lost in the deserts of Iraq. At that point, my commander and first sergeant made the decision that we need to split in half, which, if you're former military, you know, number one mistake, you never split your convoy in half. So we go from a 90-person convoy to, I think, 33 of us in 17 vehicles. So the rest of the convoy the rest of the unit tries to catch up. The back half of us stays, and we literally try to dig ourselves out of these sand pits because those are the heavier vehicles that stay behind. The morning of March 23rd, it's about 6 a.m., and we see lights. And instantly, my commander and first sergeant, I think that we are approaching the rest of the convoy. So we finally make it to the lights, and there's hardtop. And again, we hadn't seen hardtop for at least a day and a half. So we get there, and we have the decision to make to go to the right or go to the left. My commander looks at his paper map that he is given. He reads it, and we follow the path that he says to go toward. He read the map wrong, and we crossed into a city called Nazareth. And once we crossed the Euphrates Bridge, we knew instantly that this was a mistake. So we continue on because it was, again, very early. We didn't really see too many Iraqis out and about at this point, so we try to make it as far as we can. We get about halfway through the city, and my commander calls it. He was like, let's turn around, let's get back out of here. There's more and more Iraqis starting to wake up and come out to check to see what's happening. As we are turning around, again, we have the bigger vehicles, so we find that it is not easy to turn 18-wheelers around on a 2-lane road. It takes us quite a bit of time to do that, and in the process, these more and more Iraqis are starting to come outside. They're standing in the middle of their yard, sand yard, front yard, whatever you want to call it. You can see them like going up on top of their rooftops. Some of them are, opening up the windows and just peering out at us. And the further and further that we continued on to make it back out of the city is when we seen that they were armed. At this point, things kick in that this is about to get real. Now, we were told you don't fire unless you are fired upon. So we lock, we load, and we're ready. And then we heard that first dreaded gunshot, followed by the second. And before we knew it, we were just in a full-fledged ambush attack. It was coming from all directions. And it was like we were ducks in the middle of a pond with nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nowhere to escape, nowhere to get away from this because they were on all sides of us. We quickly make our way, and we are struck by an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade on the right side of our Humvee. In doing so, we ended up slamming into a back of an 18-wheeler that had been disabled in front of us. Lori, who was my best friend, my roommate, the driver of the vehicle, ended up hitting her head off of the steering wheel from the impact of hitting the back of that semi. She basically died of head trauma. My first sergeant and 2 men that we had picked up all were shot and killed. For me, I was the tiniest at the time. So I was pushed up on top of the transmission hump in the back of the Humvee. And since I was not in a seat, my body flung forward when we hit that the back of the semi. My Kevlar, your helmet, fell off and ended up putting a gash all the way up the side of my head. I was already unconscious at this time. We are still unsure of what caused that, but we're pretty positive that it was a gunshot to the right arm. So I am knocked out, and the Iraqis come around to check the vehicles to see who is alive, who is still alive, and who was KIA. And they noticed that I'm the only one still alive. So they ended up removing my body and Lori's, and they take us to one of Saddam's palaces that was nearby, where they strip us of all of our military gear, and then transported us to a Saddam general there inside the city. And they're estimating that it was about 2 to 3 hours from the time the ambush happened to the time that I awoke. But when I woke up and I was laying on this bed, and I opened my eyes, and I happened to see, 3 Iraqi men standing over top of me. And the first reaction is to jump, to jerk, to get away from them. And doing that, I realized that I cannot move. I feel like there are boulders holding me down, preventing me from moving. So I started to ask questions, like, one, why can't I move? What's happening? Where are my comrades? What happened to even put me inside of this hospital? I received no answers from them. I had one Iraqi who could speak what I call broken English, so he was able to say a few words, but we were not able to hold a full dialogue. We could not communicate. So I laid there in fear. One day, I remember them taking me down to an operating room. And the guy that could speak the broken English, I remember them transporting my body over onto the operating room table. And as I laid there and I looked up at the bright shining lights, if you've ever had surgery, you know what I'm talking about, and I just stared into that. And at that point, I realized that I didn't have any IVs. I wasn't given any kind of medication. I still, at this point, wasn't sure what was even wrong with me, of why they were about to perform surgery. So I started crying and begging and pleading for these Iraqis to please just stop. And they put the oxygen mask over my face. And probably like any of you that would do in that situation, being in a foreign country, 19 years old at the time, I couldn't contain my fear. And then all of a sudden, they stopped. And the one who could speak the broken English, he told me that they were planning on amputating my leg. But they stopped, and they wheeled me back upstairs, put me back on my bed, and wheeled me back upstairs. And it was a few days later that I was then told that they were going to return me to the Americans, to an American checkpoint, and hand me back over. And I was reluctant. I mean, just to be honest with you, I was reluctant, but I was hopeful. I was hoping that they would actually do that. So they load me up into an ambulance and we drive away. And I don't know, I mean, it feels like an eternity for me being in the back of this ambulance. And we get to a point and I can hear gunshots going off. And then I can feel the driver do kind of a 180 and we turn around. And at this point, they take me to kind of the outskirts of the city where the electricity had already been shut off. The town, there was just nobody. There was no noise. There was no kids playing. There was just nothing. It was complete silence and complete darkness. So they put me inside of this building, and then the Iraqis who are guarding me, they leave. And as I watched, kind of as they through a window, I could watch as the sun went up and the sun set, and it would become complete dark again. And I knew that I had two options. I could scream and make as much noise and attention that I could possibly make in hopes that there were American soldiers standing outside nearby somewhere. Or I could lay there in silence in fear that if I made noise, that it would draw the wrong attention to the Fedayeen or to the militiamen. And just the thought of being in the hands of somebody else, it was enough to make me realize that I was going to chance it and just lay there in silence. Again, hoping that those three good Iraqis would come back to get me. And they did. And then they took me back to the hospital. And on April 1st of 2003, I remember laying there in a tiny hospital room with two Iraqis at this time, one standing by the window and one standing by the door. And the one by the window, I could see him become fidgety. And I thought, something just doesn't feel like it has the past days that I've been in captivity. Something is different about this night. And as I watched them, I could then hear helicopters and what sounded to me as Humvees and gunshots going off outside of this hospital. And my first thoughts were, oh no, they don't know that I'm inside and they're about to take over the hospital. So I laid there and just kind of waited it out because what else could I do? And then I heard a man's voice, and he was screaming, basically, "Where is Private Lynch?" And even though this was in English, and I fully understood it for the first time since I've been captured, it still crossed my mind of this could potentially be Iraqis. And the guy at the door, he locked it. And then next thing I know, because it became all such a blur and chaos, that I basically opened my eyes and there were Navy SEALs and Army Rangers and Air Force all standing over top of me. And one of them pulled off the American flag off of his uniform, placed it in my hand, and looked at me and said, we're American soldiers, and we're here to take you home. And I remember looking at him and just saying, yeah, I'm an American soldier too. And they whisked me out of there, and it happened very quickly. Within, I think, 10 minutes of them coming inside the hospital, that they were able to get me out there and loaded up into a helicopter, where I was then transported to Kuwait, and then from Kuwait to Germany. Germany, I do not remember a whole lot of anything, but my family was able to come to Germany and be by my side. But I remember them telling me about my injuries and why I wasn't able to move, and they ran through the whole entire list. And he started with, your head has a laceration, and it did. I have the scar that goes all the way up the back of my head. My arm was basically snapped, and the humerus bone was broken. There's a rod there. My back was broken at the 4th and 5th lumbar, which is your lower back. So there's a cage there. My left femur, the Iraqis actually, when I first got to the hospital, when I was still in that unconscious state, they actually surgically went in and removed my femur bone, and they put a 1940s era rod that was unsterilized inside of my leg, but it was also fit for a man. So I am only 5'2", I'm short. So the length of the rod, being that it did not fit properly and that it was unsterilized, caused a severe infection to set throughout my leg, which is the reason I was told that they were wanting to amputate it. Thankfully, they did not, so I still have my leg. It doesn't work, but it's still there. My left tibia was also broken. They told me that they, again, when I was still unconscious, that they took metal pipes, like a ball bat or a metal object of some sort, and smashed my tibia. So there is a rod there, and then my right foot was kind of lodged underneath of the Humvee when my body went forward when we hit that semi. So my body went forward, my foot got lodged underneath of the seat and twisted kind of backwards. So it is put together with pins, screws, rods, plates. It's been fused. It's had 7 surgeries on it, just alone. And then, of course, dealing with everything else. I weighed, about 80, I think about 87 pounds is what they told me. So for 19 years old and weighing 80 pounds, I was very malnourished. I was given no food, no water during my captivity, no pain medication. I was given about 4 ounces of orange juice, and that was for kind of the filming of letting them know that I was proof that I was living, so that they could turn that back over. But that was 4 ounces in 9 days is all I was given. But as you can tell, I am up and I'm strong. I'm maybe not be the healthiest person, but I am happy, and that is what counts. So my message to you guys, and I know that I still have a long ways, but I kind of want to jump into, is that I still am in physical therapy. I still go to physical therapy 2 days a week. 17 years later, I'm really getting the VA for their for their money. Because that's what it takes to stay healthy and continue walking. Then that's what it takes. It's tiring and it's draining, but it keeps me active and keeps me here. So no matter what kind of obstacle or struggle or anything that kind of gets in your way, know that you have that strength inside of you. You got to be able to find it. I know a lot of people say, I don't know how you did it or how you survived. To be honest, I don't know either. It's just when you are in that kind of position that you find any will to keep on surviving, to make it one more day. I know that if I would have been there even, 5 to 10 more days longer, I don't think that my body would have literally lasted, just because of the fatigue, the trauma, and everything else that was combined facing. So know that you do have the strength inside of you. Like she mentioned, I joined the military because I wanted to have that opportunity to go to college. So once I returned and once I got to a point where I was able to walk and get around campus, I went back to school. I started up at W.Va, realized that campus is way too big for somebody who cannot walk. So I transferred back to Parkersburg, and littler campus, littler rooms, so it was easier to get around, and was able to finish my bachelor's degree. And then I decided, you know what? I love schooling that much that I'm going to keep on going, and I went back and got my master's degree. So I keep telling my daughter up here, who's 12 years old, I'm like, you got a lot of schooling left in you, because if you think that you're quitting at 18, negative. So I'm all about the education and seeing the youth. Right now I am doing a long-term subbing job at my little town, Warwick County. I'm from Warwick County. So I am speaking on the side, going to physical therapy at night and subbing through the day, and somehow I make it all work. I am exhausted and tired usually by the end of the day, but again, I find that time to get it all in there. So kind of get back on track. So yeah, Veterans Day, like I said earlier, it's not necessarily just about me. I tell this story in honor of the ones who are no longer here with us. I lost 11 of my comrades that day in Iraq. And unfortunately, they'll never have that chance. Their family will never have that chance to tell their side of the story. So I continue to honor them and pay tribute to their sacrifices that they laid upon us. Again, it's a day for just remembering and honoring all veterans, not from my unit, not from me, but the ones that were in here standing up earlier. So thank you so much for your service, your sacrifices, for your family. I know it takes a toll on families as well, spouses. So thank you to everyone who has either a family member that is currently in or a veteran, because we all know somebody who has served. So again, thank you so much for having me here today, and it has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your story. Wow. unbelievable. Can't even imagine everything you dealt with and are currently dealing with. That will conclude our program. We do have a reception right down the hall in the Alumni Lounge that you are all welcome to. I would ask that you be sure to go out of your way today and every day to thank our servicemen and women. Thank you.